Brewers David Heath American Imperial Stout Challenge. We've scaled it up to 23 litres. We've got 35 litres of water warming up in the hot cap, 5 litres in our sparge kettle, whose lid is missing, and it's the hottest day of the year, and it's 9 o'clock in the morning, so by the end of the day I shall look even worse than I do now with my COVID hair and copious amounts of underarm deodorant. So let's see how we go. I've doubled the boiling time to 1 hour and 20 so that I can have a sparge, because it's nearly 10 kilos of grain for a 23 litre brew, so it doesn't allow for a lot if you have a 60-minute boil. We're probably going to mash for 90 minutes just to try and get every ounce out, and I'm going to follow some advice I've had by several people to do with stirring for the first 10 minutes with no recirculation, and then recirculating very slowly so you don't get any compaction. I shall see you when it's time to mash. So here's the kit I had made up at Malt Miller. Pretty much exactly the same. I think there's one malt that isn't the same make that I had to sub, but it's basically the same malt. And there's one hop that we couldn't quite get. We are going to mash in here in a bag, which we call the Killian Irish method, because he introduced this to us. And I think I'm going to put the malt in first and lower it into the mash water, which is the Chris Robertson Saf Brew method, because he introduced us to that one too. So we at Chuckle Brewers name everything we do after the people we discovered it from. So this is the David Heath brew. So if it's a disaster, it's all David Heath's fault. Here we are, nearing our mash temperature. We're gone for 65.5 because it's a 65 mash, but 65.5 I can stir it for a while without it losing too much temperature. So I'm going to stir for quite a long time before I even start reheating and recirculating. Based on previous experience with heavy mashes, recirculation becomes a bit of an issue, so I'm going to try and get it through its first 10 minutes to loosen up the grain and things. Okay, that was advice from someone on David's forum, whose name I can't remember. So we've just broken our own rule there. Little tip with these hot cats is when you're trying to get to your mash temperature, have the water recirculating, because in these higher units, basically the bottom half is exactly the same as the lower units, like the 45 litre and the 50 litre, but because they're giving it more height, you get these bands of heat in the water that sort of settle out, and if you don't recirculate, you think you've hit your mash temperature, you put your mash in and suddenly it shoots up 5 degrees. So what we usually do is aim for the mash, let it run for 4 minutes after the mash with recirculation, and usually that's enough to bring it back down to a happy medium. The new firmware, by the way, on the hot cap is much better than the old firmware. This is our second machine, as the first one had a thermostat problem, but this one, it really does feather its way into the temperature. So I think in our last mash, which was a very simple one, but on our last mash I think we were never more than about 0.5 of a degree above where we were aiming for, and about 0.6 of a degree below, but that kept it between about 64.5 and 66, so it was pretty good, yeah. So I'll be back when I'm mashing in. So I'm going to lower the mash in. It's not too heavy when it's dry, avoiding all the catch points. Now, being the Saf Brew method of doing this does take a while. Basically it floats to start with and you gradually sinks, but don't be in any rush. You have to keep an eye on the bag, because if it doesn't, where are those edges? There they are. Make sure it's all lined up. It sinks a lot better if you sort of break the seal, so you have to dig the water out really, just to get it to finally go down. Wow, that is quite a lot of grain for a 23 litre brew. Right, now this is going to take me some time to loosen all this stuff up, and at the same time I have to try and make sure the pipe is actually on its moorings, which would help. There we go, there's some liquid starting to show up now. There we go. Once it finally breaks the mash seal, it soon loosens up. You have to obviously make sure there's no lumps or dough balls as they call them. It's quite an effort because it's not exactly shallow in there. Obviously having 35 litres in the mash does help with this huge thing, but the bag is something of a pain in the bum because it keeps slipping off its moorings. Perhaps what I need to do is with one hand affix your bag and with the other stir your mash. Actually, this has gone much easier than I thought. The last big mash like this we did was wheat, and stirring that in was an epic trial. So I'm going to keep stirring this for a good 10 minutes or so. Oh, hold on. Hey Siri, set a timer for 10 minutes, darling, alright?
Your timer is set for 10 minutes.
Thanks, Siri, baby. There we go. Siri's invaluable on a brew day. I'm not sure why she's Australian. I'm sure somebody's been fiddling with my phone, but I find that if you talk to her in an Australian accent, then she's much more friendly. If you talk to her in a British accent, she's a bit distant, you know. Distant. She tries to invite you out on a date and can drink you under the table, but in an Australian accent, she thinks you're one of them. Everybody's happy. Okay, right. I'll be back in 10 minutes or so to put the top of the pipe and start some sort of recirculation. Only 7 minutes into the mash, and look at that lovely dark colour in our recirculation pipe stroke sight glass. Very nice. Got it going very, very slowly on the recirc. Don't even see it anywhere there, but it's really is just a dribble. But so far it looks like the temperature isn't overshooting by a huge amount. Everything seems to be going well. Let's pray. Giving it a little bit of stir at the 15-minute point. It's going a lovely brown colour. The top plate has sunk a long way, which means there has been some compaction. So I'll put that there. Give it a good old... Oh, it's not too bad. It's settled down, but it's still quite loose. I'm surprised because I set this at about 2.7 litres per kilo, and I expected it to be quite dry at that to try and get the sparge, but it's actually quite wet. And it already feels much, much, much looser. And by the way, I always pause the process when I'm giving it a stir, because sometimes it takes longer than others. Gives it time to cool down a little bit as well. It overshot this time by a little bit, which means it was compacting a little. So I think we're up to 67 degrees now, which is too over target, but it means the heater won't come on for a good old time now, so saving on the electricity and all that, you know. I shall lower my wattage. I'm currently at 1100 watts. I normally do 800, but it was at the beginning it seemed to be struggling a little to get there. So pipe back on. Sorry, top of pipe back on. Try and get it even. Lid required. With circulation arm. Starting to get warm now, and close that down. Probably start the pump off at the same slow rate it was before, and unpause. There we go. 75 minutes. Next time to go. Second 15 minutes so that's not very exciting. So that's that done. But pre-boil, it's supposed to have a gravity of 1071. I've just taken a reading of it 1061, but that's pre-sparge. Sparge leads the sparge to go in. So I think I'm aiming for about 108 to get to my sparge level, and I've still got 50 minutes of my mash to go, so it's not going too badly. Nothing's burning, we haven't overheated yet. Fingers crossed. Another stir, that's the 45-minute thing. We're halfway through our mash. It's a bit of a long mash, but I've got to get the goodness out of the grain for David. So the wort tastes amazing. It's a really lovely, rounded, malty taste. We've never made a stout before, so perhaps they all are, but this tastes like it's going to be really quite nice if the yeast doesn't, if the cuvaic doesn't ruin it, because I'm using the farmhouse variety. And and last time we used that, it was turned everything into orange cordial, which took about 3 months to dissipate. So hopefully this time won't be so bad. Mash paused, undo the pipe, lift the lid. Look at that. It's a lovely, lovely, lovely brown colour now. Tastes amazing. Tastes very chocolatey. Oh, where's my glove? Oh, it's pathetic, isn't it, really? Wearing a rubber glove, it's only 65 degrees. Ooh, wow, the plate is a long way down. I think that shows that the mash is pretty much gone. Okay, right. Stir. Oh, wow, there's hardly anything left. I think I have had the best out of this mash. It is without doubt a well-meshed mesh. In fact, there's not even enough to rest the old top of the pipe on. Okay, so last stir, and we've got 75 degree 10-minute mash out. Probably give it a stir before that as well. And then I shall take a sample, and we shall know whether we have got our 108-ish that we need before we sparge. I also feel it's worth pointing out at this stage, with the mash out on its way, that we are using Tesco's Finest, so our pH, well, what's it saying here? It's about 6 point something, I think, rather than, where is it? Where does it say the pH? There it is, 6.2. This brew, according to Brewfather, is supposed to be about 5.38 for a pH, so we're already at a slight disadvantage. But so far it's gone extremely well. I'm extremely pleased. I think the most we've been about a degree, 1.1 degree above, and that was about the third, before the third stir. I got a bit leery with the recirculation speed. I think it backed up a bit. But so far this has been a really good brew. There's hardly anything left in the grain. I mean, it occupies about a fifth of what it did before the mash, probably less. There's nothing to stir anymore, really, so either the grain has managed to make its way through a bag and the grill, or it's really, really spent. So, can't wait to take a reading. It's getting very warm in here. It's about 30 degrees now. I've got to stay in my t-shirt. When we were recirculating at 75 for the mash out, it stuck. So the pump couldn't work anymore, it was that stuck. And it was basically like slurry. The extra temperature just seemed to tip it into concrete. Don't know why, but the rest of the mash was alright. Looked like we're going to be low on our figures, but the grain, when you taste it, has got very little left in it. It's sparge done. We're just waiting for it to finally drain. So I've got about 5 litres out of it yet before I hit my boil volume, and then I'll take a nice reading and we'll see how far off we are from our 171. Wow, I picked the right day to brew. Another lesson learnt is don't go for the extra fine grind from malt miller, because it might seem like it's going to be more efficient, but it really is a very fine grind. I'm chewing a bit of stuff now and it's completely flavourless, so I'm guessing that if we don't hit our gravity, it's either the subbed out grain we used, which hasn't got quite as high a sugar content, or I don't know what. Okay, I am now what I would describe as digging for wort. Because this grain is so finely it's so finely ground, so finely, basically it's holding a huge amount of liquid, and I'm still about 3 litres off what I need for my boil, so I'm just digging it off the bottom, and as you can hear, it releases more liquid because what's on the bottom is so fine that it's not letting anything through. So we're getting there, slowly but surely. I think, is this what they call digging for victory? Is it what they did in the war? Did they dig for victory like this? Were they talking about making a brew with fine grain that gets stuck in the last mash out and made your life a living hell? It's 32 degrees in the garage, and this is even warmer. Last dig for victory. We're down to still need 2 litres out of this to get to boil volume. I've got it preheating now. I had let it drop because I don't like it. It's going to take a long time to get the volume. I don't like it to boil while I've got the thing over the top of it. It doesn't feel good. Right. There is sweetness in this grain, but it's hard to tell if it's in the grain or the liquid that's still in there. I think it's in the liquid. It's hard to tell because this stuff is so dark. It's also muddy. Oh, just not used to stouts. They make a man of you though, definitely. Certainly the brewing of stouts makes a man of you. This is one of the hardest ones we've ever done so far. The wheat one, obviously, our wheat brew was infinitely harder, but that was just a stuck nightmare. This didn't get stuck until the mash out, which is just bloody weird. Someone explain that to me, mash out sticking. How do I get it? It's done. Heating to boil 35, just over 35 litres, which is the target for this pre-boil amount. I'll take a sample and a reading, and let's hope we get somewhere near something reasonable. So, after a good stir, it came up to about 1063, so that's 8 points underneath 1071 that Beer Father calculates I need at this point in the process. We now have a 2-hour boil. How exciting is that? Won't put hops in and things until the second hour of the 2-hour boil. I'll obviously have to adjust and work out how much volume there is and things, and if it's not working out properly, I think I'll aim for the volume rather than the alcohol content, because it's we do lose quite a bit in our fermenters and quite a bit out the bottom of the hop trap. Depends on. It doesn't look like it's going to be a lot of protein and things. I'm absolutely exhausted. That was one of the most exhausting meshes I've ever done. Ended up being about 2 hours in the end because I had to re-stir it and things. The mash out got stuck, and then it was hard to get the liquid out because it was so fine. So we're heading for a boil now. What are we at? 73 degrees. I shall join you when we're well underway. Half a degree off boiling point. Hey, we're now boiling. So as you can see, it has a lovely head, much as Mr. Heath had. We don't have any grain in it though because we used a basket and we had a lot more room. So there might be the odd bit, but there's hardly any grain in it at all. So I just need to stir in the protein head, which won't take too long, I don't think. Yeah, so I'm thinking about the gravity. I've put them back in the calculator, and I don't know if it's because I downloaded the recipe and it was set to 1095, but it doesn't really matter what I do with the amount of grain, it still comes out at 1095 as a final gravity. So it might be that even though I've swapped in my own grain now, which is obviously the non-IRX version of it all because nobody sells that over here, then it might be different. Slightly different EBC, it's slightly less dark than the one Mr. Heath brewed. I'm trying not to stir it too much, just give the bottom a little scrape. It feels like there's a tiny bit on there. Not tons, but there's some build up on there. It's a nice smell. I can see why people like brewing stouts. It makes for a a lovely smell and a lovely chocolatey taste, at least as a wort. I mean, once we put the Kveiak in, and it's been going for a month or so, God alone knows what it'll taste like, but I'm hopeful because it's very, very mellow. There's a very mellow flavour, and like I said before, a slightly chocolatey edge to it. As you can see, the hot cat these days boils like Billio. Again, it's something to do with the firmware. The original version used to hit 100 and then switch off for up to half a minute and then come back on. Look at this one go. I mean, it switches on and off now, but it's for seconds rather than minutes, and yeah, it really rocks. It's a hell of a boil, which is probably why we get about 4.5 litres an hour, I think. Although I've never really measured it that well. It usually comes out about right. So I'll make a decision when it gets nearer to the end of the boil, well, nearer to the hour, about how much more boil is going to be. We've started putting in our bittering hops 45 minutes from the end of a 60-minute boil, and we find that, especially for bitters and pale ales, you get the bittering, but you also still get a little bit more flavour out of it for some reason. An hour, I think, is just a bit too much. So that's what we're going to do with this one as well. 45 minutes for the main hop, the bittering hop, and then I think the next set is at 15 minutes, then there's one just before the end. Not sure if it's worth putting a proto thingy in for this. Guess it probably is. Because protein is protein after all, you don't really want it in your drink. There we go, almost headless now. What a brew. Wow. That's hot. I suppose you'd expect that really when somebody's boiling, for it to be hot. Okie doke, back in an hour. So we are about an hour from the end of the 2-hour boil. I had to add a bit of time because the boil isn't really working the usual speed. We usually get 4.5, we're going to get about 4. But if I add the hops now, and we should get about the right amount. Just stick them in. Where have they gone? Oh yes. Nice little pops. Nice. Pretty fresh they were. They were 2019. Smell good coming out of the bag. And they're already can make it smell more like beer. Wow. Whew. Oh, that's the first hop drop done. Back for another one 15 minutes from the end. This is the slightly lesser amount of, what was it? Let me have a look. 15-minute hop drop of, where are you? 15-minute hop drop of Cascade. 46 grams of Cascade going in about 60 seconds. We have exactly 1 litre left to boil off, and we've got, well, we will have about 15 minutes, which, you know, that sort of adds up. Look at it. The wonder of Brewfather. It's a great piece of software once you get your machine profile tuned properly. There we go, and in she goes. Oh, babble, babble, toil and trouble. Ask your mother, where's the rubble? Okay, so 1 more hop drop to go, 1 minute from the end of the boil. So, yes. Protoflock and nutrients are in, and we've got 6 minutes to go. There's a hop drop a minute from the end, and then we start cooling. So just on the volumes, it says about 26.25 litres. I'm supposed to get to 26, so it's going to be pretty near. Obviously it's very hard to tell once you put the cooler in, which is going in about 30 seconds. So cooler in, and I think we're going to about hit our mark on 26. Also discovered that the refractometer, because of the heat, I've been measuring it, just putting it on the glass, measuring it, that's no good at all. It comes out a lot lower, so if you blow on it a bit, let it cool down, it's considerably higher. So about halfway through the boil I looked at it, and it was at about 1.081, which is much nearer the target than I thought it was going to be. So once we're done, just before it cools, I'm going to take another sample, and hopefully we'll be somewhere there or thereabouts. We're not going to hit it though. Already down to 70. It's only been going a second. Quite hard to do this. Quite fiddly. I may need to fish out the hot bags, because the last time we did this, the hot bag sat on top of the thermometer and screwed up our readings completely. In fact, we thought we weren't cooling, and we were. So maybe a bit later. Clean the spoon. Just then I have to do it while I'm here. Just get them out of that area. You don't have to come out all together, just out of the cooling loop, because that is pretty much where the thermometer is, which we're probably doing all the way around really. We probably should have the cooling loop on the other side. Jesus, it's hard. It's so hot. Now we have the opposite problem, in that the hot bags are now set on the pump pipe. God almighty. When are we going to catch a break? Okay, we're down to nearly 50 degrees, and I have to say, even though it's dark, you can sort of see from the tube that it's pretty clear, so that's a good sign. So it's dark and clear, can't see much in the way of protein in there at all. Probably wasn't worth putting a protoflock in, but old habits and all that. So we're going to have to wait for another, I don't know, 20 or so minutes, and then it's into the fermenter. Cavaic over the top, which the starter never finished, so just going to throw the whole thing in. It won't make that much difference. It was only DME and it was only about 150 grams of it, so if anything it might actually water it down. But yes, so what gravity have we got? Let's go and try. Based on our cheap and cheerful hydrometer, with a bit of blowing on and everything to cool it down, it's somewhere between 187 and 188. I'm going to say 188 because it's a very blurry line. It's in that region. Let's say 188. So 7 points short of the 1095, but the volume is bob on according to our sight glass, which again is not necessarily the most accurate thing in the world. But we're in the region. We're nearly 190, which for me is probably, that's the strongest brew we've ever made. So hopefully it's going to be, oh, we're down to 39 degrees, so we're nearly there for our Cavaic. It's best to spray them at the last minute because we put Brewers lube around the outside, and that holds the rubber in because it's a pain in the bum. Rubber slips really easily. So that's Brewers lube on the outside, and then we spray at the very last minute, which we are very close now. Hope we've got enough air into this thing. There goes our yeast starter. Much more of it than I wanted to put in, really, but the starter hadn't finished. Like I say, it was pretty weak, but it was taking its time. It's gone in at hopefully about 33 degrees, and we haven't ruined anything. Babble, babble, babble. Babble, babble, babble. I love my fencing. We use rather a lot of it as we sterilise the bejesus out of everything. Excuse the burps. It's been a very, very strange day, very hot day. I think I have every right to have a little bit of guess. There you go. Still enough in there? I think so. Bubbler in. A bit of extra gunk. Right, let's see what temperature.
Do you want these hot bags anymore?
No. What hot bags?
The ones with hot things. Did you want the names?
Oh no, no, I've got them in the thing. Right, what temperature does that say? 30. Bob on, 30. Brilliant. Here I am with a summary of the brew. It went into the fermenter went into the fridge, 30 degrees C. Within 20 minutes it was bubbling like crazy. 24 hours later it stopped bubbling. I had my hair cut, thank God. Gave it a swirl, it started again. So hopefully this time in a week or so we might have it finished properly. We're putting the temperature up, I think, to about 32. That's as far as we want to push it, because the last Cavaic experience it got very orangey much past that. I shall be back with a tasting video when a tasting video is appropriate, which might be some time off, being an Imperial. Thank you.